Hello, welcome back. This is your Professor Sudha Kolathu Parambil. You are going to learn ellipse. In this section, you will learn how to write the equation of the ellipse in the standard form. How to graph ellipse centered at the origin and not centered at the origin. Also, you will learn how to solve the applied problems involving ellipses. Can you imagine standing at one end of a large room and can still able to hear a whisper from the person standing at the other end? This is the National Sanctuary Hall in Washington DC. This is known as the Whispering Chamber. Shape of this room is a semicircular. Because of this shape, it makes possible for the sound to travel along the walls and the dome. And later in this section, we will investigate this shape, including how far apart two people in the sanctuary hall can stand and still hear each other whisper. We can draw an ellipse using a piece of cardboard, two thumbtacks, a pencil and a string. This string length is not changing, it's fixed length. And you can stretch the string using the pencil and you can start moving the pencil. So string will be stretching like that. Then you can draw the ellipse. So these two are fixed points. And this is a fixed length. Length of the string is also fixed. These two fixed points are known as the foci of the ellipse. So from this activity, can you define an ellipse? An ellipse is a set of all points x, y in a plane such that the sum of their distance from two fixed points is a constant. That means the distance d1 plus d2 is always a constant. So let's derive the equation of the ellipse. If this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, this is at center 0, 0. Focus, we always use the letter C to represent the focus. Since this is on the x-axis, this will be C, 0. This is on the left side of the x-axis, so that will be negative C. So negative C, 0. This is the same thing I am writing here with including the coordinate of the focus. And this distance, if you take any point xy, this is the distance d1, this is the distance d2. That means the distance from the point to each of the foci. These two are the vertex of the ellipse. This is also one of the point on the ellipse, right? So d1 and d2 are the distance from each foci to the point. So if I am taking that point as a0, that is a point. So instead of xy, I am taking that point is a0. Distance from this point to this vertex, that is a minus negative c, right? That makes it a plus c. And distance from this point to this vertex, that is a minus c. Then we are adding that and see what kind of constant we will get. So first one is a minus negative c plus a minus c. So a plus c plus a minus c, c will get cancelled. We are getting that is equal to a. So that constant is always 2a. Then we can use the distance formula to derive the equation of the ellipse. I am not going to ask you to derive the formula for the exam or quiz. So we will focus on the equation and how it related to the graph. So this is the basic equation of the ellipse, where the center is at 0, 0. Let's analyze that first. This is the standard form of equation of the ellipse with center at 0, 0. X square divided by a square plus y square divided by b square equal 1. Here a is always bigger than b. A is the vertex that is on the x-axis, and this b, that is this length, that is on the y-axis. This longer axis is known as the major axis, smaller axis is known as the minor axis. Length of the major axis means the length from here to here. Since the center is 0, 0, distance from 0, 0 to here is a, distance from 0, 0 to this end is also a plus a make it 2a. Similarly, the length of the minor axis, that is this length from here to here, that is 2 times b, that is 2b. And the relation between ABC is c square equal a square minus b square. Here a is always bigger than b. That means the denominator of x square is bigger. What if the denominator is y square is bigger? How does the graph look like? Then the major axis will be along the y-axis or on the y-axis, and the minor axis will be on the x-axis. And remember, the focus will be always on the major axis. So these two will be the focus. Graphing an ellipse centered at the origin. Here first analyze the denominator of each term. So you can see that denominator of y square term is bigger compared to the x square term. That means the major axis will be on the y-axis. And in an ellipse, a is always bigger than b. So this will be a square, this will be b square. If a square is 25, a can be equal plus or minus 5. I'm taking the square root. And b can be equal plus or minus 3. Because negative 3 whole square and 3 square both will give you 9. The question is asking you to graph the ellipse, then identify and label the center, vertices, co-vertices and foci. I usually graph briefly to see how the graph look like. Then I graph it neatly, then I answer the questions. Since the major axis is along the y-axis, the shape of the graph will be kind of like that. And this is at 0, 0. So this length, I know that is 8. This length has to be 5. This length also has to be 5. And this length is 3. This length is 3. So from there, I will identify what will be the coordinate. So if it is at center 0, 0, if I measure 3 units to right, it will be 3, 0, right? If I'm measuring 3 units to left, it will be negative 3, 0. If I'm measuring 5 units up, it will be 0, 5. And if I'm measuring 5 units down, it will be 0, negative 5. So I was able to identify the center. I know that is at 0, 0. I identify the vertices. These two are the vertices. Whatever on the major axis, that is the vertex or vertices, because we have two of them. And co-vertices means that is the end point of the minor axis. So those are the co-vertices. And we need to find the foci. So from this, I don't know the foci, but I can use the relation which I learned, c square equal a square minus b square. So c square equal 16, that means c equal plus or minus 4. Since the foci is on the major axis, I need to measure 4 units from the center. So the foci will be 0, 4 and 0, negative 4, because I'm measuring 4 units up and down from the center. So these are the foci. After that, you can graph it neatly, include the center, vertices, co-vertices and the foci on the graph. And you can conclude the answer. The center is at 0, 0. Coordinate of the vertices are at 0, plus or minus 5. And the coordinates of the co-vertices are at negative or positive 3, right? So you can write plus or minus 3, 0. And the foci are 0, plus or minus 4. We found that using this formula, c square equal a square minus b square. Graph the ellipse given by this equation. But this equation is not given in the standard form. Standard form is x square divided by a square plus y square divided by b square equal 1. That means we need to rewrite this in the standard form. So our first approach is make the right side equal 1. So we can actually divide each term by 100. Then simplify from there. If you divide each term by 100 and reduce the fraction, you will get x square over 25, y square over 4 equal 1. And in ellipse, a is always bigger than b. That means a square always bigger than b square. So 25 is bigger than 4. So this is a square, this is b square. So we can say a square equal 25 and b square equal 4. We can briefly graph this before answering all this question and before graphing. Since the denominator of x square is bigger the shape of the ellipse will be like this, and center it at 0 0, and the vertices, these two are the vertices, that will be 5 units from 0 0. So this is 0 0. 5 units from 0 0 means it will be 5 0, and this will be negative 5 0. And these are the co-vertices or the endpoints of the minor axis. That is actually 2 units from the center. So which coordinate is 0 for that? I know one of them is negative 2, other one is positive 2, but which coordinate is 0? Since it is on the y-axis x coordinate has to be 0. So these two will be 0, this will be positive 2, and this will be negative 2. And remember, foci is always on the major axis. We can find that using this formula, c square equal a square minus b square. Then solve for c, you will get plus or minus some value that goes here. So we can conclude that the centroid is 0 0, and vertices are at plus or minus 5 0, and co-vertices are at 0 plus or minus 2. Then use this formula to find the foci. So C is plus or minus 25 minus 4, that is plus or minus 21. So foci is plus or minus square root of 21 comma 0. Now we can graph it neatly using all this information. Graph it, include the vertex, foci, co-vertex and the center. In this section you learn the standard equation of an ellipse center at 0 0 and their graph. And here A is always bigger than B. If A is below X, then the major axis will be on the x-axis, and length of the major axis will be 2A. Length of the minor axis will be 2B, and we can find the foci using this formula. And foci, remember, that is always on the major axis. If A is below y square, then the major axis will be on the y-axis, and length of the major axis will be still 2A, and length of the minor axis will be still 2B, and the foci we can find using this formula. But remember, here the foci will be on the major axis, so it will be on the y-axis.